The transport ship moved slowly through the silver clouds of the frontier world known as Talvaris. From space, the planet looked peaceful, glowing with soft blue oceans and scattered islands covered in forests. But anyone who had visited before New Talvaris was never truly quiet. It was a meeting point for dozens of alien species, a place where trade agreements, political debates, and combat tournaments happened at the same time. Strength and reputation mattered here almost as much as diplomacy. Ethan Carter stood near a wide observation window inside the ship, watching the planet grow larger. He was not wearing heavy armor like the other guards around him. His uniform was simple, practical, and clean. His expression remained calm, though he felt the usual tension that came before stepping onto a new world. Humans were still relatively new members of the galactic community. Many species respected their curiosity and persistence, but others believed humans were physically weak compared to advanced warrior races. Ethan had heard those opinions many times. He rarely argued. Instead, he focused on doing his job well. The ship descended toward a massive floating city built above the ocean. Bright towers curved like waves, and ships of many shapes filled the sky lanes. The city was famous for hosting the Arena of Honor, where warriors competed in ceremonial combat to settle disputes without full-scale wars. Ethan's team was part of a diplomatic escort assigned to observe the games. Officially, they were here as neutral witnesses, but unofficially, humanity wanted to learn more about the cultures gathering here. As the ship landed, a voice announced security rules. Personal weapons were restricted inside the main arena complex. Ethan placed his small defensive tool into a storage locker along with other equipment. He did not mind. He had trained long ago to rely on awareness rather than technology. Outside, the air felt warm and carried the smell of salt from the ocean below. Crowds filled the wide walkways and different species moved side by side. Some were tall and armored with natural plates. Others were small and quick, speaking in musical tones. Ethan walked quietly with his team, observing everything. High above the arena gate stood a massive statue of a warrior holding no weapon, only raised hands. The translation device in Ethan's ear explained the inscription, "Strength begins with control." Inside, thousands of spectators filled layered seats around a circular battlefield. Energy barriers shimmered around the arena floor, protecting the audience. Fighters waited along the edges, preparing for matches. One warrior stood apart from the others. She was tall, with silver-blue skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her armor looked both elegant and dangerous, designed for speed rather than heavy defense. Many spectators whispered when she appeared. Her name was Kaylee's. She belonged to a warrior culture that valued discipline above all else. She had never lost a match in this arena. Kaylee scanned the crowd as she waited for her next opponent. Her people believed observation was the first step of victory. She watched movements, reactions, and emotional signals. Most competitors showed signs of fear or arrogance, which made predicting their actions easier. Her attention paused briefly when she noticed the group of humans entering. Humans were unusual to her. They lacked natural weapons like claws or hardened skin, yet they continued appearing in dangerous places. She watched them only for a moment before returning her focus to the arena. The match began with a roar from the crowd. Kaylee's moved like flowing water, avoiding heavy strikes and responding with precise counters. Within minutes, her opponent surrendered. The audience cheered loudly. Ethan watched with interest. He appreciated skill more than spectacle, and Kaylee's showed incredible control. She ended the fight without unnecessary harm, something Ethan respected deeply. Hours passed as different matches unfolded. Ethan and his team moved through observation platforms, taking notes. The atmosphere felt festive, but beneath it he sensed tension. Security patrols increased around certain areas, and some spectators behaved nervously. The first sign of trouble came as a sudden flicker in the energy barrier surrounding the arena floor. Most people assumed it was a technical issue. Ethan felt something else. Years of experience made him pay attention to small irregularities. Moments later, loud explosions echoed from an entrance tunnel. Panic spread instantly as armed figures rushed into the arena. They wore dark armor with no visible markings. Their movements were aggressive and coordinated. Security forces responded quickly, but confusion slowed them. The attackers used advanced devices to disrupt communications. Ethan's training took over. He guided nearby civilians toward an exit corridor, speaking calmly to prevent panic. Without weapons, he relied on positioning and awareness. He noticed a fallen guard nearby and dragged the injured person to safety before returning to help others. Kaylee stood at the edge of the arena, watching the chaos. Her instincts pushed her toward combat, but she paused when she saw something unexpected. A human, unarmed, moving directly toward danger instead of away from it. Ethan blocked an attacker from reaching a group of children by throwing a loose metal panel into the path. The impact distracted the enemy long enough for civilians to escape. When another attacker charged, Ethan stepped aside and redirected the movement, using balance rather than force. Kaylee's observed carefully. His style lacked traditional power but showed adaptability. He used the environment as part of the fight, turning weakness into advantage. More attackers entered, and the situation worsened. Ethan realized escape routes were becoming blocked. He moved deeper into the arena corridors to find another path, guiding a small group behind him. One attacker noticed him and advanced with a weapon raised. Ethan picked up a broken piece of railing, not as a weapon but as a shield. He deflected the first strike and moved closer, disrupting the attacker's aim. With a precise motion, he caused the enemy to lose balance and fall. Kaylee's felt something shift inside her understanding. Her culture respected warriors who faced impossible odds, but she had never seen someone fight effectively without tools designed for combat. She jumped into action, defeating several attackers with swift movements. Yet her attention kept returning to the human. Ethan continued protecting strangers, even when escape seemed impossible. He stayed aware of everyone around him, making quick decisions that minimized risk. His face showed focus but not anger. Eventually, security forces regained control of the area. The remaining attackers retreated or were captured. Silence slowly replaced chaos. Ethan leaned against a wall, breathing heavily but steady. He checked on the civilians one more time before allowing himself to rest. A shadow fell across him. He looked up and saw Kaylee standing there. Up close, her presence felt powerful but calm. She studied him without speaking at first. Her eyes showed curiosity rather than hostility. "You fought without a weapon," she said finally, her voice clear. Ethan shrugged slightly. "There were people who needed help." Her expression changed, almost thoughtful. "Most would have run," he gave a small smile. "Maybe. But running wouldn't have helped them." Around them, other warriors watched with surprise. For Kaylee's to approach someone outside formal combat was unusual. She stepped closer, her gaze intense but respectful. "Strength is not always what I expected," she said quietly. Ethan felt slightly uncomfortable under the attention. He was not used to being the center of focus. "I just did what anyone should do." Kaylee's remained silent for a moment, studying him as if trying to understand something deeper. Finally, she turned away, but not before giving one last look that suggested this was only the beginning. High above the arena, officials debated the meaning of what had just happened. A human had fought unarmed and survived against trained attackers. For some, it was a curiosity. For others, it was a sign that humanity might hold unexpected strengths. As the sun set over the ocean, casting golden light across the floating city, Ethan walked back toward his assigned quarters. He believed the day was ending. He did not realize someone had already decided to watch him more closely from now on. "If you want, I can continue with." The day after the chaos in the arena, Ethan moved carefully through the floating city of Talvaris. The streets were still crowded, but the tension from the previous attack lingered in the air. Vendors cleaned stalls, guards patrolled in larger groups, and spectators whispered about the unarmed human who had faced the attackers and survived. Some called him reckless. Others called him brave. He did not seek attention, but it had found him anyway. Kaylee's was already aware of the growing attention he attracted. Her eyes followed him from the edges of the crowd as he guided his team through a secure pathway. She observed quietly, not wanting to disturb the humans, yet feeling drawn to study this unusual creature further. To her, humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability could be dangerous or remarkable. Ethan had proven he was remarkable. The first time she approached him was in a quiet corridor near the council chambers. She did not announce herself. Ethan sensed movement and turned just in time to see her standing there, the light glinting off her silver-blue armor. She had an air of calm authority, yet something about her posture suggested readiness to act at any moment. "You survived the arena attack," she said without preamble. Her voice was firm but carried no accusation. Unarmed against trained attackers, you protected others without hesitation. Most of your kind would have run. Ethan looked at her, measuring her carefully. Maybe, but someone had to help them. It wasn't about me. Kaylee's tilted her head slightly. Your focus is unusual. Humans are usually unpredictable. You're disciplined but not rigid. That combination makes you dangerous in a way I respect. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I'm not looking to be dangerous. Her eyes narrowed in thought. Dangerous is a matter of perspective. You've already proven yourself to the crowd. Now prove yourself to me. Ethan felt a mix of surprise and caution. To you? How? Kaylee's moved closer, her movements smooth and precise. Through a sparring match, not as punishment, not as judgment, but as observation. I need to understand what kind of human you truly are. Ethan hesitated, aware that she was far stronger than any human he had met, yet there was something in her tone that suggested not malice but challenge. All right, he said finally. I'll do it. They arranged the sparring in a secure section of the arena, away from spectators. The energy barriers formed a soft enclosure, glowing faintly under the afternoon sun. Kaylee's gestured for Ethan to stand in the center. No weapons, she reminded him. I want to see your strength without tools. Ethan nodded. He trusted his instincts, his training, and his experience. Kaylee's expression remained unreadable, her eyes studying his posture, his breathing, every subtle movement. The match began with a fluid motion from Kaylee's. She moved forward with precise, calculated strikes. Ethan responded by dodging and using the arena's terrain to his advantage, leaning into her momentum and redirecting energy rather than opposing it directly. Each movement he made was measured, efficient, and deliberate. She was impressed, not by raw power, but by his ability to adapt in real time. Minutes passed, neither gaining clear dominance. Kaylee's tried different techniques, expecting him to falter. Each time, Ethan's creativity and adaptability surprised her. He used walls, rails, and even his own balance to shift the battle. He was not the strongest, but he was resourceful, fast-thinking, and unyielding. During a pause, Kaylee stepped back, breathing evenly. Most would be tired by now. You remain focused. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. I focus because it matters. Strength alone doesn't always win. She considered this. You are right. Strength alone does not define victory. Strategy, willpower, and courage do. You embody them all. As the sparring continued, Kaylee's realized she had underestimated him. He was more than survival instinct. He was aware of others' safety, always scanning for threats not just to himself, but to those around him. This human strength was quiet yet undeniable, rooted not in brute force but in resolve. After another exchange, she stopped the match with a raised hand. Enough for now, she said. You have passed the first test, not against me, but against the expectations of your kind. Ethan let out a small sigh of relief, leaning against a support beam. Expectations don't matter much to me. Kaylee studied him silently, then nodded. Perhaps they should, yet what you show is rare among humans. You fight without ego, without desire for glory, only to protect. Ethan looked down, modest. I don't fight for glory, I fight because it's the right thing to do. For a long moment, Kaylee's remained silent. Then she spoke softly, almost as if to herself. This is what I was looking for, courage without arrogance, strength without cruelty, spirit without weaponry. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent alerts from the council chambers. Ethan and Kaylee's exchanged a glance and immediately moved toward the source. The criminal faction that had attacked the arena was planning another strike. Intelligence suggested this time they would target multiple species simultaneously. The potential for widespread chaos was high. Ethan did not hesitate. We need to warn them, evacuate civilians, stop the attackers, he said firmly. Kaylee's nodded. We work together. You lead your kind, I lead mine. Then we coordinate. Their mission began with stealth and observation. Ethan's knowledge of human tactics combined with Kaylee's understanding of alien combat created a balance neither had experienced before. They moved through the corridors and backstreets, scanning for suspicious activity. They found signs of preparation, hidden equipment, altered energy fields, and encrypted communications. An ambush awaited them at the sector's supply dock. Dozens of attackers had gathered, expecting to trap them. Ethan signaled Kaylee's to hold a flank while he guided civilians into safer positions. The attackers opened fire with energy-based weapons, but Ethan used quick thinking and environment manipulation to deflect and evade. Kaylee's engaged directly, her strikes precise and swift, disabling enemies without fatal force. Her movements were like water, smooth yet powerful. Ethan moved alongside her, coordinating their efforts seamlessly. Each action built upon the other, blending human improvisation with alien martial discipline. The fight lasted long enough for the attackers to realize they had underestimated their targets. Ethan used barricades, leverage, and timing to neutralize threats efficiently. Kaylee's admired his ability to adapt under pressure, to anticipate movements, and to respond instinctively without hesitation. As the skirmish ended, the attackers retreated, leaving the humans and allied aliens victorious but alert. Ethan caught his breath, scanning the area for further danger. Kaylee's approached him, observing his calm despite exhaustion. "You did well," she said quietly. "You didn't rely on weapons, you didn't rely on others, you acted with clarity and purpose." Ethan shook his head. "I did what had to be done, that's all." Kaylee smiled faintly, a rare expression among her kind. "It is more than enough. You embody qualities that most warriors spend their lives searching for but never achieve. You adapt, survive, and protect. That is a rare combination." Ethan looked at her, curious. "And you? What do you see in this?" "I see a human who might change how others see your kind," she replied. "Not just as weak or inexperienced, but as capable, adaptable, and courageous. You show potential beyond the expectation of the galaxy." Over the next few days, Ethan and Kaylee's continued to observe and train. They sparred in controlled environments, studied strategy together, and shared insights about their respective cultures. Kaylee's taught him advanced combat techniques, while Ethan introduced her to improvisational thinking, situational awareness, and adaptive tactics. Their mutual respect grew, as did an unspoken connection that transcended cultural differences. At night, when the floating city glowed under twin moons, they walked along the observation decks overlooking the ocean. The city's lights reflected in the water below, casting soft patterns across their path. Words were few, but each carried meaning. They spoke of duty, honor, and survival. Kaylee shared tales of her warrior culture where only strength and discipline mattered. Ethan shared human stories of courage found in unexpected places and the power of protecting others. Their partnership evolved naturally. Neither needed to force it. Together, they represented something unique, the blending of species, the combination of intellect, courage, and adaptability. Where Kaylee's people valued tradition and strict hierarchy, Ethan demonstrated the strength of flexibility, empathy, and creative thinking. Together, they learned that true strength came not from isolation, but from cooperation. The criminal faction's threat still loomed, and intelligence suggested a larger conspiracy aimed at destabilizing the region. Multiple species were targets. Ethan and Kaylee's knew they had to act, not only for their own safety, but for the civilians and warriors who relied on them. When the next attack came, it was more coordinated than before. Attackers moved in multiple waves, attempting to flank and overwhelm security forces. Ethan and Kaylee's were at the forefront, blending strategy and combat skills seamlessly. Ethan used environmental hazards to disrupt enemy formations, while Kaylee struck decisively with unmatched precision. Together, they became a force neither could predict individually. In the midst of battle, Kaylee's finally spoke with intensity. "You fight like no other human I have ever seen. You inspire more than fear, you inspire respect." Ethan dodged a strike and countered, keeping calm. "I'm just trying to help people survive." "Survival alone is not enough," she replied, eyes locked on him. "But the way you fight, the way you care, changes how I see humans. It changes how I see courage itself." After the battle, as calm returned, Kaylee stood beside Ethan. Around them, allies and civilians began to rebuild. She finally spoke in a tone that was personal, almost intimate. "You have proven yourself, not to me but to the galaxy, and you have my attention." Ethan looked at her, surprised by the weight in her words. "Attention is dangerous sometimes." "Sometimes," she said with a rare smile, "but sometimes it is deserved, and you have earned it." The sun set over the floating city once more, painting the horizon with orange and violet. For Ethan, it was not the end of danger, but it marked the beginning of something different. A partnership with an alien warrior who saw the potential in humans in ways no one else had. Together, they were no longer just observers or protectors. They were a new force in the galaxy, bridging cultures, blending skill and courage, and challenging expectations. The stage was set for greater challenges. The criminal faction was not finished. The alien council was observing, curious about human potential. And Kaylee's, she had decided to watch Ethan closely, not just as a warrior observing another, but as someone who might share a future built on mutual respect, courage, and unyielding spirit. The days ahead promised danger, discovery, and a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to be strong and to fight for others without hesitation. The morning on Talvaris was quiet, but the calm felt fragile. Ethan moved through the corridors of the floating city with heightened awareness. His team had been tasked with patrolling areas near the arena and the council chambers, keeping civilians safe and monitoring for any unusual activity. Even though the previous attacks had been contained, intelligence suggested the criminal faction had regrouped, planning a more coordinated strike. The city's defenses had been strengthened, but Ethan knew that preparation alone would not be enough. Kaylee's was already moving through the streets, observing patrols and monitoring civilian movement. She had spent days studying Ethan's strategies, learning to predict his instincts, and more importantly, gaining insight into human adaptability. Her warrior mind understood patterns, and Ethan's way of thinking broke patterns in ways she had not expected. She respected it, and the respect had grown into a quiet curiosity, one that she could not ignore. Ethan paused near a junction where a crowd of citizens had gathered to hear announcements. Officials were instructing everyone to stay calm, and security personnel moved in organized formations to direct civilians toward safe zones. Ethan scanned the area carefully, noting exits, potential hazards, and positions that attackers might exploit. Kaylee's approached silently, her presence strong but unobtrusive. "They will strike here," she said, her voice low, almost to herself. "They will not attack openly. They will try to split our forces, create chaos." Ethan nodded. "That's why we need to position civilians and defenders strategically. Quick movement, awareness, coordination. We can't rely on brute strength alone." Her eyes softened slightly as she studied him. "You are different from the others I have seen. Most humans flee or panic. You think, you plan, you adapt. That makes you dangerous to them in a way they do not understand." Ethan shrugged. "I'm not trying to be dangerous. I just want to keep people safe." Kaylee's gave a faint nod, a rare gesture of approval. "And that is why I follow you, not because you are strong, but because you are brave, and because your strength is not just physical." The first wave of attackers arrived unexpectedly, striking from the shadows. Ethan moved immediately, guiding civilians toward secure passages while avoiding confrontation until necessary. The attackers were armed with advanced energy weapons, far more powerful than anything he had faced in training. Yet he remained calm, focusing on timing and positioning, using walls, debris, and barricades to block attacks and redirect assailants. Kaylee's moved alongside him, her combat style precise, efficient, and swift. She dispatched enemies with minimal effort, her strikes measured, never wasted. Watching her in action, Ethan realized how complementary their skills had become. She embodied discipline and power, he embodied adaptability and strategic thinking. Together, they formed a fluid unit that neither the attackers nor the observers had anticipated. As the attackers pressed forward, Ethan noticed a group of civilians trapped in a narrow corridor. Without hesitation, he positioned himself between them and the advancing enemies, using a fallen panel as a makeshift barrier. Kaylee's joined him, her presence both protective and commanding. "You need to move them now," she instructed. Ethan nodded. "On my mark." He timed his movement carefully. When the attackers lunged, he pushed the panel, creating an opening. Civilians ran through while Kaylee's intercepted the assailants, neutralizing the threat quickly. Her efficiency saved valuable seconds, and the civilians escaped unharmed. After the initial wave, they regrouped near the arena. Ethan was breathing steadily, though his body ached from constant vigilance. Kaylee studied him, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. "You are remarkable," she said finally. "Not because you survived, but because you inspire others to survive. That is a kind of strength I did not expect from a human." Ethan smiled faintly. "I do what I must. I don't think about inspiring anyone." She shook her head slightly. "Inspiration is not always deliberate. Sometimes it is a consequence of action. You act without fear, and that sparks courage in others. That is rare." The second wave of attackers emerged, more organized and coordinated. They had learned from the previous encounters, and attempted to split defenders into smaller, vulnerable groups. Ethan and Kaylee's anticipated this. Using a combination of human ingenuity and alien combat skill, they moved through the city like a coordinated storm, redirecting attackers into positions where they could be controlled and neutralized with minimal casualties. Ethan's movements were instinctive yet calculated. He blocked access to key points, manipulated environmental hazards, and redirected energy attacks. Kaylee's anticipated enemy reactions, cutting off advance paths and guiding civilians to safety. Together, they formed a pattern that was both predictable and unpredictable, predictable in their efficiency, unpredictable in their improvisation. During a brief lull, Kaylee studied Ethan more closely. "I watched you during the first wave," she said softly. "You fight differently than anyone I have ever encountered. You do not rely on power. You do not rely on weapons. You rely on thought and will. That is impressive." Ethan paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I guess I've had to rely on that a lot." "Brute force doesn't always work." She gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "It works for many, but it is not the only path. You demonstrate another way, a path I did not expect to see from a human." Their conversation was cut short as the attackers regrouped for a final assault, bringing with them heavier weaponry and reinforcements. The city's defenses were strained. Ethan and Kaylee's moved to the front lines, coordinating both human and alien defenders. Civilians were moved to safe zones, and escape routes were secured. The battle that followed was intense, requiring every ounce of their skill, focus, and courage. Ethan used the environment to his advantage, causing energy barriers to reflect attacks, debris to block advance paths, and timed movements to force attackers into positions where they could be contained. Kaylee's executed precise strikes, disabling advanced weaponry, redirecting energy attacks, and neutralizing opponents with minimal effort. Each action was deliberate, calculated, and complementary to the others. In the heat of battle, Kaylee saw something extraordinary. Ethan, unarmed and human, inspired the defenders around him. They moved with courage, confidence, and coordination. Civilians aided in minor defensive actions, while alien soldiers adjusted tactics based on his instructions. The human's influence extended beyond personal action. It reshaped the battlefield itself. When the attackers realized their plan was failing, they attempted a desperate retreat. Ethan and Kaylee's pursued only enough to prevent escape without overextending themselves or risking civilians. The battle concluded with the attackers either captured or forced to flee. Talvaris city remained intact, and the civilians were safe. Kaylee's approached Ethan as he leaned against a wall, catching his breath. Her expression was thoughtful, almost introspective. "You have proven yourself today, Ethan, not just in combat but in spirit. You inspire strength in others, you protect without hesitation, and you adapt when faced with impossible odds. That is a rare combination." Ethan shook his head slightly. "I just do what has to be done. I don't think about rare combinations." She studied him carefully. "Perhaps that is why you succeed where others fail. You do not act for recognition or glory. You act because it is right." A quiet moment passed between them. Around them, city workers and defenders began the process of recovery. Kaylee's looked at him with intensity, a rare openness in her gaze. "Humans are often underestimated," she said softly. "You have changed how I see your kind. You have also changed how I see courage itself." Ethan felt a weight in her words. He did not fully understand it, but he sensed the respect behind them. "I don't want to change anyone's mind. I just want to survive and help." Kaylee stepped closer. "Survival is important, but your actions demonstrate something more. You embody qualities that few species, few warriors ever achieve. Courage without arrogance, strength without cruelty, adaptability without ego. You are extraordinary." Ethan looked at her, unsure of how to respond. Words seemed insufficient. "I thank you." She gave a faint smile. "No thanks are necessary, but understand this. Your actions today have consequences beyond the battlefield. You have proven that humans are more than their reputation suggests. You have earned the attention of the galaxy, and my attention as well." Ethan blinked, surprised. "Attention?" Kaylee's eyes softened. "I will be watching, not as an enemy, not as a critic, but as someone who recognizes the potential within you and within your kind. That is rare. That is worth attention." Over the next few days, the city settled into recovery. Officials praised the coordinated defense, and intelligence reports highlighted Ethan's role as key to the success. Civilians and soldiers alike spoke of his courage, efficiency, and leadership. Kaylees continued to observe, often joining him during patrols or strategy discussions. Their partnership deepened, blending human creativity with alien precision. At night, they walked along the observation decks overlooking the ocean, reflecting on the events that had transpired. The city's lights shimmered across the waves, twin moons casting silver patterns on the water. Words were few but meaningful. They spoke of strategy, survival, and honor. They shared stories of their respective worlds, finding common ground in values, courage, and the desire to protect those who could not defend themselves. Kaylee's respect for Ethan evolved into something more nuanced, a recognition of character that went beyond admiration. She had watched countless warriors, humans and aliens alike, but Ethan's combination of adaptability, courage, and selflessness was unprecedented. She found herself quietly drawn to his spirit, his approach to challenges, and his unwavering dedication to others. Ethan, in turn, began to understand the depth of Kaylee's skill and insight. She was not only powerful but disciplined, intelligent, and perceptive. He learned from her in ways that enhanced his understanding of tactics, timing, and the value of composure in the midst of chaos. Their collaboration was seamless, a natural balance of instinct and discipline. As the sun rose over Talvaris, signaling the beginning of a new day, Ethan and Kaylee stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. The air was calm, but both knew that danger could return at any moment. Yet for the first time, Ethan felt that they were ready together to face whatever came next. Kaylee's turned to him, her gaze steady and unwavering. "You have shown me the true potential of humans," she said. "Your courage, your adaptability, your resolve, it is rare in the galaxy, and it has earned my respect." Ethan met her eyes, a faint smile forming. "I don't seek respect, I just do what needs to be done," she nodded slowly. "And that is why you have it." In that quiet moment, above the ocean and the glowing city, a bond was forged, one built on trust, mutual respect, and the recognition of strength beyond simple power. The galaxy would never underestimate humans in the same way again. And Kaylee's, she had found someone worthy of her attention, not through strength alone, but through courage, heart, and unwavering spirit. As the city prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, Ethan and Kaylee stood side by side, ready to face the future. Together, they represented a new hope, a new example of what could be achieved when courage, skill, and compassion combined. And in that combination, the galaxy glimpsed the extraordinary potential of humanity.